Best HFY Stories, Accidentally a War Crime. The human race was new to the galactic stage, a fledgling species eager to prove its worth among the stars. Though their technology had just begun to catch up with the rest of the universe, their ability to adapt and outsmart their enemies was legendary. And sometimes, they took the term accidentally a little too literally. It all started on the peaceful planet of Valoria, a thriving world rich in resources and home to the Valorians, a race known for their strict moral code and stoic demeanor. The Valorians had long been at peace with their neighboring species, and when the humans arrived as part of a diplomatic delegation, they were eager to share their planet's bounty and knowledge. The human crew was a mix of diplomats, scientists, and a few soldiers just in case. Captain Alyssa Collins, leader of the delegation, was a level-headed and experienced negotiator. She had dealt with delicate situations before, but nothing had prepared her for what was about to unfold. It began innocuously enough. The delegation was invited to a formal banquet at the Valorian capital, a majestic palace surrounded by lush gardens. Alyssa and her team, including Lieutenant Daniel "Danny" Reeve, a quick-witted and sarcastic soldier with a knack for unintentionally causing chaos, were mingling with their Valorian hosts. The Valorians, with their porcelain skin and long, flowing hair, were a peaceful and hospitable people. Their technology was advanced, but their culture was centered around balance, serenity, and reverence for life. They had no concept of war, and even their defenses were more ceremonial than practical. Still, the humans were impressed by the peaceful air that hung over the planet. The evening's festivities were moving along smoothly until one of the Valorian dignitaries, Ambassador Kylo, offered a toast to the eternal friendship between our people. The humans raised their glasses, but when Danny, always one to crack a joke, overheard a nearby Valorian murmuring about the traditional Valorian gift, he couldn't resist. "Hey, is that the part where you give us the giant, terrifying war beast you've been secretly breeding for centuries? You know, the one with the claws like razors and teeth that could rip through armor?" he said, loudly enough for a few nearby Valorians to hear. The room went silent. Alyssa's eyes went wide. Danny had no idea what he'd just triggered. Ambassador Kylo, smiling serenely, nodded. "Indeed, it is. We offer it as a symbol of our enduring peace, by sharing our most feared protector, the Zikvort." Before Danny could respond, the grand doors to the palace's main hall opened, and a massive creature lumbered in. It was roughly the size of a small building, its body covered in thick, chitinous plates that gleamed in the candlelight. 6 legs, each ending in razor-sharp talons, propelled it forward. Its mouth, lined with rows of glistening teeth, opened in what could only be described as a guttural roar. Danny froze, realizing with sudden horror that the war beast wasn't a joke. It was real. The Valorians had brought it out in good faith, expecting awe or respect. But Alyssa, quick to react, immediately ordered her security team to protect the delegation. "Get back, everyone. Stay behind the barricades." It was too late. The Zikvort, not understanding the sudden change in atmosphere, began to lash out. Its tail whipped, knocking over furniture. One of the Valorian dignitaries screamed as the creature's claws sliced through the air, narrowly missing the ambassador. In a panic, Danny fired a warning shot into the air. It wasn't intended to harm, but the Zikvort misinterpreted the sound as a challenge. It turned, roaring in fury, and charged straight for him. Alyssa dove for her gun, but Danny had already reacted. He pulled the trigger, firing a few well-placed rounds that hit the creature in its vulnerable joints. The Zikvort shrieked, staggering back, but it didn't stop. Instead, it rampaged through the hall, crushing anything in its path. In the chaos that followed, human and Valorian forces scrambled to subdue the beast. Danny's quick thinking had bought them time, but it was too late. The creature was already too enraged. In the end, the Zikvort was killed, but not before leaving a trail of devastation. The aftermath was complicated. Ambassador Kylo, while grieving the loss of the creature, whom the Valorians considered sacred, looked at Danny, who stood sheepishly in the middle of the wreckage. You killed it," the ambassador said, his voice low. "Our protector, our sacred guardian." Danny's face paled. "I didn't mean to. It just misunderstood." Alyssa stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "This was a misunderstanding, Ambassador. We didn't know what the creature meant to you. We just reacted to defend ourselves. The Valorians, though initially in shock, slowly began to understand the human position. But the damage was done. A galactic war crime had occurred, an unintentional one, to be sure, but a war crime nonetheless. The incident would go down in history as a classic example of human unpredictability. What followed was a tense series of negotiations, with human diplomats offering reparations, and the Valorians eventually agreeing to forgive the incident after much debate. It wasn't the ideal start to humanity's galactic journey, but it was one they would never forget. In the end, it was decided that humanity's relationship with the Valorians would continue, though now with an extra clause in their treaties: no sacred war beasts at banquets. As for Danny, well, he spent the rest of the week apologizing profusely. And that, my friends, is how humanity accidentally committed a war crime. Best HFY Stories, Accidentally a War Crime, Part 2. After the Valerian disaster, Captain Alyssa Collins was left with a massive headache. Diplomatic tensions were at an all-time high, and the human delegation had just set a galactic record for the most awkward first contact. Worse still, the news had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Humanity had gone from being a fresh face of potential to a species that could accidentally start a war over a misunderstood gift. But the real question lingered: how would humanity ever live this down? For Alyssa, the answer came in the form of an unexpected diplomatic mission. The Galactic Council had convened to address the issue of the Zikvort incident, as the media had dubbed it, and in a last-ditch effort to prevent an all-out war, they decided to send a human representative to the HFY system, a militaristic and highly secretive species that had not been keen on human diplomacy from the start. The HFY were known for their brutal and efficient military strategies. Their warriors were among the best in the galaxy, and they operated under a strict code that rewarded combat prowess above all else. Humans, with their unorthodox approach to warfare, or lack thereof, had never made a good impression. Alyssa was tasked with leading a small delegation, which was, of course, accompanied by Lieutenant Danny Reeve, whom the higher-ups insisted on sending for his quick thinking and ability to handle intense situations. Of course, Alyssa knew better. She just hoped he didn't fire at anything again. Not after what had happened with the Zikvort. As they entered the HFY system, the atmosphere was tense. The HFY ships were massive, with sleek black hulls that reflected little light. It was a stark contrast to the gleaming white of human ships. Upon docking, they were greeted by an imposing figure, General Mkar, a towering creature with thick, chitinous armor and glowing red eyes that pierced through the darkness of the docking bay. Mkar's gaze swept over the humans, and there was a moment of silence before he spoke. "You bring your diplomat," he rumbled, his voice a low growl. "Are you here to surrender, or to fight?" Alyssa swallowed hard but stood her ground. "We're here to discuss an alliance, General Mkar, a peaceful one." The HFY general studied her carefully. "You are the ones who killed the Zikvort?" Danny winced but didn't speak. Alyssa nodded carefully. "It was an accident, General. We did not understand its significance." The HFY warrior was silent for a long time. Then, with a deep, rumbling laugh that echoed through the chamber, he turned away. "You are brave to come here after what you did. Most would flee from the consequences of such an act." He glanced back at Danny. "But you, human, have caused enough chaos already. Perhaps you will prove useful to us in other ways." Alyssa felt a chill run down her spine. Danny, of course, wasn't the best at understanding the nuance of diplomacy, especially when it involved alien species. Still, it seemed their presence was tolerated, for now. The HFY led them to a massive hall where they would discuss the potential alliance. It was a place where warriors proved their strength, and it was here that the humans were about to learn just how far HFY hospitality extended. "You wish for an alliance, human?" General Mkar asked, his tone not unkind but still commanding. "Then you must prove your worth. Here, now." Alyssa was about to protest, but Danny stepped forward with a grin. "We'd be happy to. How do we do this? Arm wrestling? Duel to the death?" He laughed, thinking he was joking. Mkar's eyes narrowed. "There is no joke here. Soldier, we fight. A trial of strength. You will face me in combat." Danny froze, his smile slowly fading. "Wait, what?" Before Alyssa could stop him, Mkar was already moving toward a circular arena, surrounded by HFY warriors who were already murmuring excitedly. The air was thick with the expectation of a brutal contest. "Don't just stand there," Danny whispered to Alyssa, panic creeping into his voice. "This is not what I signed up for. I was kidding about the duel." But the HFY were unforgiving, and Alyssa had learned long ago that negotiations were rarely about what you intended. They were about what you were forced to do when backed into a corner. This was a diplomatic trial, and whether or not Danny was ready, he was going to have to fight. "Fine," Alyssa muttered. "Just don't do anything stupid." The combat began. Danny, despite being fit and trained in basic combat techniques, was outclassed by Mkar, who towered over him like a mountain. The HFY general was faster, stronger, and a lot more experienced. He moved with a fluidity that belied his bulk, easily dodging Danny's attempts to land a blow. Alyssa watched in horror as Danny was knocked back again and again. But something remarkable happened, something that could only be described as human ingenuity under pressure. Danny wasn't winning, but he wasn't backing down. As Mkar lunged for him, Danny ducked, using the HFY's momentum against him and knocking Mkar off balance. It wasn't strength or skill, but pure desperation that fueled Danny's movements. And then it happened. As Mkar recovered, Danny saw an opening and, without thinking, swung a nearby weapon, a ceremonial HFY sword that had been placed for decoration. He wasn't aiming to harm, but to just get some space. The blade connected with Mkar's armor, but it did more than that. It tore through the armor's weak spot and struck deep. The arena fell silent. The HFY warriors stared, wide-eyed. General Mkar stood frozen for a moment, staring down at the gash in his armor. Then, with a deep, guttural laugh, he slowly knelt before Danny, raising his weapon in acknowledgement. "You have proven your worth, human," he said, bowing low. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought." Alyssa, who had been certain they were about to die at the hands of the HFY, blinked in disbelief. "That was not what I expected." Danny, now covered in sweat and blood, gave a sheepish grin. "Yeah, me neither." And thus, humanity's accidental war crimes continued. But at least, this time, they'd gained an unlikely ally. Best HFY Stories, Accidentally a War Crime, Part 3. After the HFY incident, humanity had earned a somewhat precarious reputation across the galaxy. Their aggressive, unpredictable nature, paired with their knack for survival against the odds, had made them both feared and admired. But Captain Alyssa Collins knew it wasn't enough to rest on their laurels. The galaxy was a big place, and their next diplomatic mission was even more critical. They had been invited to the Andrix system, home of the Drakari, a highly intelligent species that was as technologically advanced as they were enigmatic. The Drakari had a reputation for being cold and calculating, with an unsettling tendency to view every species as a potential resource to exploit. The humans, eager to prove they could forge alliances without violence, saw this as an opportunity to turn things around. Alyssa had learned to trust her instincts, and after what had happened with the Valorians and the HFY, she knew that Danny, despite his penchant for accidents, was still a key part of her crew. So, once again, he found himself at the heart of yet another diplomatic mess, though this time, he had been given explicit instructions to not make any comments about war beasts, sacred animals, or anything that could be misinterpreted. The Drakari capital was unlike anything the humans had seen before. Towering spires of metal and glass stretched toward the sky, bathed in a perpetual orange glow from the system's twin suns. The Drakari themselves were striking, tall, with sleek, reptilian features, sharp claws, and eyes that glowed faintly. They were fiercely proud of their culture and equally wary of outsiders. The humans were greeted by High Administrator Zethar, a formidable Drakari who exuded both elegance and a subtle menace. Zethar had heard of the humans' recent incidents, but for some reason, he was intrigued. Despite their apparent chaos, the Drakari had studied the humans and recognized the potential danger they posed, if they could be harnessed. "Welcome to Drakaris, Captain Collins," Zethar said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "We've been watching your species with great interest. Your tendencies toward causing destruction have not gone unnoticed." Alyssa forced a smile. "We're not here to cause trouble, Administrator. We want to open dialogue, not conflict." Zether's eyes narrowed. Dialogue. Yes. But there is an old saying in Drakari culture, only the strong are worthy of being heard. And strength, as you know, is not merely physical. It is mental. It is technological. It is strategic. Alyssa wasn't sure what he meant by that, but she didn't have time to ask before Danny, who had been quiet until then, blurted out. So, you're saying if we don't prove we're strong, you're not gonna talk to us? Is that the deal? The Drakari shifted slightly, their clawed hands twitching. A tense silence hung in the air. Alyssa gripped her collar, trying to keep a calm face. It wasn't like Danny to speak without thinking, but she had grown accustomed to his talent for turning every situation into something interesting. Zether, surprisingly, didn't react with anger. Instead, his lips curled into something that could almost be described as a smile. Indeed, you humans are quick to act, and that is both a strength and a weakness. But this is a test, one of intelligence and adaptability. We have something here we think you may find interesting. Before Alyssa could respond, Zether gestured to his aides, and a large object was rolled into the center of the room. It was a holographic projection, large enough to fill the space between the Drakari and the humans. It showed a map of a distant star system, with a massive black hole at its center. This, Zether said, his voice growing more serious, is the Vorex cluster, a system we've been studying for centuries. It contains vast resources, but it is extremely dangerous. The gravitational pull of the black hole is unpredictable. The star systems orbit it in highly elliptical trajectories, making mining efforts difficult, if not impossible, for any species, except one. Alyssa's curiosity piqued. She leaned forward. And that one species is? Zether's eyes glinted. Humans. We have watched you survive in situations no other species could. Your adaptability, your ability to think outside the box, is unparalleled. We believe you can help us unlock the secrets of the Vorex cluster. If you succeed, an alliance will be formed. Fail, and we will leave you to your own devices. Great, Danny muttered under his breath. Another death trap disguised as a diplomatic test. Your task, Zether continued, ignoring Danny's comment, is to retrieve the mineral sample from the heart of the Vorex cluster. It will require an unprecedented feat of engineering and navigation. You must pilot your ship directly into the gravitational pull of the black hole and extract the mineral from the unstable asteroid orbiting it. Alyssa knew the odds were against them. No ship had ever survived close proximity to such a powerful black hole. But her team had no choice, they couldn't afford to refuse. We'll need the best equipment and your support. You'll get it, Zether said, his voice still calm. But know this, Captain, this is not merely a test of your technological prowess. It is also a test of your resolve. Danny, who had been silently processing the information, suddenly grinned. So basically, if we don't die, we win. Zether's smile tightened. If you don't die, you win. But if you do die, it is a natural consequence of your own actions. Alyssa didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she had no choice. All right, we accept the challenge. The next few hours were spent preparing for what was sure to be a near-impossible mission. The human crew worked furiously to retrofit their ship, using the advanced Drakari technology provided to them. Danny, somehow, managed to break half the equipment in the process. No surprise there, but he eventually pulled it all together, mostly thanks to his ability to think on his feet when things went wrong. When the time came to launch, Alyssa stood on the bridge, staring at the swirling mass of the Vorex cluster on the screen before them. The black hole loomed ahead, dark and ominous, but their ship had been modified to withstand its gravitational anomalies, at least. That was the plan. With a deep breath, Alyssa gave the order, engage. The ship lurched forward, and the crew held on as they sailed into the swirling abyss of the cluster. It was like nothing they had ever experienced, gravity pulling in all directions, the ship shaking violently, and the feeling of time stretching as they approached the edge of the black hole. Through sheer human ingenuity, they managed to execute a flawless maneuver, skimming the black hole's edge and retrieving the mineral sample. But just as they were about to retreat, disaster struck. The ship's engines faltered, and they were caught in a gravitational pull, tumbling toward the event horizon. Alyssa's heart raced. Everyone, brace for impact. But just as all seemed lost, Danny, as always, managed to save the day in his own chaotic way. Using the same think first, act second mentality, he bypassed the failing systems and re-engaged the engines just in time to escape the black hole's pull. They returned to the Drakari homeworld, battered but alive. Zethar stood waiting for them, his gaze unreadable. "You have succeeded," he said, after a long pause. "You may have accidentally proven your worth, but the results speak for themselves. An alliance is now inevitable." Alyssa exhaled in relief. "We didn't just accidentally prove it, Administrator. We earned it." Danny, wiping sweat from his forehead, smiled. "And we didn't die, which, you know, is always a plus." Zethar inclined his head. "Indeed, it seems that humanity has more to offer than I thought."